Good evening, everyone. My name is John Tate, and I'm the event coordinator here at McNally Robinson Booksellers. We are gathered here tonight on Treaty 1 territory, the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. In addition, McNally Robinson Booksellers itself rests on land once occupied by the Métis community of Roostertown. We are here tonight to celebrate the publication of a weird, wonderful, and just overall incredibly engaging poetry collection, Scofflaw by the inimitable Garry Thomas Morse. Published by the good folks at Anvil Press. Now we are co-presenting this evening with our good friends of the Winnipeg International Writers Festival as part of Thin Air 2021. This is one of a number of hybrid events, meaning both in-store and online events that we are co-presenting with them as part of the festival. And their director, Charlene Deal, will be up later on to tell you more about some forthcoming events in the series as well. Just a few very brief housekeeping notes with the knowledge that I'm the last person anybody is here to see. So you will not have to put up with me for very long. But while we're in this space, we just ask that everybody please keep their masks on. Those people who do come up to the front will remove their mask when it comes time to speak, when they are socially distanced, but will otherwise remain masked throughout. At the close of the event, we'll move along to the signing portion. That signing portion will take place by our cash desk. There's a table set up there. Once you leave this performance space, you will officially be in retail world. At that point, this slightly different rules apply, and we'll ask that you keep your mask on, but also begin to socially distance as soon as you leave this space. A little bit strange, but something we have to follow in order to be in compliance with everything and to keep all you safe. Other than that, there'll also be time for a Q&A following the conversation between Garry and Pat's host. When it comes time to ask questions, rather than pass around the microphone for us all to share, I'll just ask that you ask the question, which I will then repeat into the microphone for the benefit of all those gathered here tonight and for the benefit of everyone at home. But that's more than enough for me. I'm very excited about tonight's reader and tonight's author, specifically because not only is he an incredible poet, but he's also an incredible reader of this poetry. So I'm just as excited as many of you are to actually see the performance. Garry Thomas Morse is a two-time nominee for the Governor General's Award for his poetry collections, Discovery Passages and Perry Harbor, and a two-time nominee for the Relit Award for his speculative fiction novels, Minor Episodes, Major Ruckus, and Rogue Cells, Carbon Harbor. His most recent title is a novel, Yams Do Not Exist, that is, of course, outside of Scofflaw. Morse has served as the 2018 Jack McClelland Writer-in-Residence at the University of Toronto and as the 2019 Harold Shields Writer-in-Residence at the University of Winnipeg. Please join me in giving a very warm in-person and virtual welcome to Garry Thomas Morse.
Thanks, everybody. I'll just say a quick word about what Scofflaw. Scofflaw is a sort of mythical character, an outsider, and it's a little bit of reflection on my moving from as a West Coast Indigenous person, as a Kwak moving to on the prairie and being among people that have long histories with a different Indigenous or non-Indigenous. And so I sort of want to have something, a work that exists out a myth outside of territory and outside of time, and outside of certain restrictive laws. So the first poem I'm going to read, Name Your Poison, is dandelions are very important to butterflies. And there was this guy bragging on his down the street, and he was bragging about how he managed to poison some, even though you're not supposed to. Because he's a sort of scofflaw, but not in a good way. Name your poison. We'd heard it all before, but sit yourself down with a facial tissue or two. Bound to be pseudo-tragic, this primitive diatribe felt for stress and strain in every section. No way to cram our specialized surus into carved niche or crude aftermath of historical hiccups. Speaking of which, the new pesticides are too pricey this summer. What kind of town where them some bitches can drink in public from a dandelion? The other afternoon, plain as a nose on a face, that tawny-edged skipper clung to a purple shoot like nobody's business. We tell our amigo, quit trying to make vetch happen. Won't sleep a wink till that disturbed area is history. Tear up by the roots anything that stirs, bathe in blue light, bask in scenes of a greenish square, prepare the spare tabula rasa, clean enough to eat off it. What time the show begin? Acquainted at best with that teller of tall tales, we sink a few in endangered joints with bedroom views in the works, can still hear the weaker thans from the back room, can still hear ourselves not think. Maybe tear down those idle stretches of repurposed blot-outs. Name a progress. Game to try our hand at commodities like organic affect and free-range amnesia. Strum. Listen before you can say ululation. He's on you, plying his trade, something terrible. Quick hands brown from the sun or circumstance of a difficult birth. Don't ask. Calls himself Scofflaw with a voice that cracks into that insectile rasp through rushes you hear through centuries of sheer innovation. After the first mow, see sweet clover fly up about his bare feet. Stands to reason there's a picture window along Jean Brebeuf, where Scofflaw steps into the frame. Black swallowtails flit by. Early one morning, he shows us a long row of chrysalises, each from a silken hook suspending disbelief. Each shell's the same shade as the substrate, or so he says. Keep 'em peepers peeled for translucence, a hint of wet wings before eclosion. Whatever. Exterminate the brutes, or at least that wretched European skipper, a colonial threat to our trade in Timothy seed, feed of champions, prize getters, outside long shots. Meanwhile, our neighbor humble brags about the best poison for the dandelion menace. We expect it might come to blows, but Scofflaw's eyes brim over. In his world view, grasshoppers are kosher, easily gulled, delicious between marked up, unleavened, what have you. Not to mention the way Athenian women wore fake cicadas to show they had sprung from the soil, rocks and trees flaunting the virtue of being autochthones. Well, that shuts us the fuck up. Okay, there was a similar incident that inspired this poem, Extinct Pennies. I was on one of this swath of green, and it's quite nice there. There's a few of them in Winnipeg where you can, and there maybe where a railroad was, possibly. And so this guy came by and he was like, dude, he was asking if he thought there was an Indian graveyard there. So this is an interesting incident. So it to get me thinking. So extinct pennies would be the pennies you used to put on the railway. It's no longer there. Sediment of history. Extinct pennies. You can't teach an old dog not to toss out recycling, knotted in plastic, nor a bear not to exfoliate with a hella big rock, nor the likes of us the way a little bit of schnitka can up the ante. Our recidivist chum clears throat, kicks lectern aside, rails against corn-fed media for calling prairie grasses uncultivated farmland. Listen, in that string quartet, the sense of dread strikes us as cringy. Our sweetheart deal to extradite dissident organs via whims of the free market, 20 shades of totalitarianism, another agitato light hack cracking up over relentless metronome. So goes the polystylism of the self-pardoner's tale, another stir-fried apology presaging the movement about to seize the nation by a short-term memory. Whoa, the auto-acknowledgement. I did hear one in Toronto, an auto-acknowledgement. Whoa, the auto-acknowledgement dictates the moment of prayer for the pipeline extension that funded this mundane dog and pony. Maybe a slow clap for cleanup crew taxed into making this finger food spread reality, not merely theory. Scofflaw shears grass ceiling, ignites some sage to bless the territory for saying no, but meaning yes. By no means the first to drink the Fool-Aid for only pennies a glass. Before his vitals are auctioned off, he could tutor a wax moth caterpillar to snack back on plastic or an intestinal nematode to eat up crude spillage, shinny up the traumatic bottlenecks wielding illustrateds from the 70s rebellion, shooting past looting natives depicted as lounging beneath tri-colored sun umbrellas. Even the tentative footbridge of e-reconciliation is built upon the bones of crushed workers buried in the comments. Weird how a synthetic thread and 10 million environmental T's will end the planet. In summary, sorry, not sorry, for what was said during the public apology. Anything with more meat than a soundbite would soundly slap him out of this hysterical fiction with "It'll No More" showing record numbers, storming the one-track train of thought from sea to sea. They're doing Ubu this year, sampling ube to cool off, sweet tuber treats, according to our town crier, plagued by flies for his kinship with nature, for his station in the new world. In the scheme of things, we never knew no man to have such a non-smell. Dogs would stop to lick the fur along the backs of his legs. Shame we ever pegged him as a projection of our schismatism, our stigmatism, no longer able to hear that trill and posthumous nocturne over the crunch of remains giving us grief. On the usual hike home, a tourist stops us to ask if the swath of green is an Indian graveyard, meaning to leave it intact like that. Scofflaw bears crowded teeth and spits, reckons it has endured a railroad. So this is one I owe Warren Carreau thanks for thank you, Warren, for his poem he read in Etobicoke about the remains they found under the Human Rights Museum, the native remains there. So that he drew my attention to the whole story and that, which is interesting. It's an interesting juxtaposition of our politic vis-a-vis our virtue vis-a-vis reality sometimes. And so this also has, well, I don't need to tell you about the Gandhi, the statue of Gandhi that's outside. He makes an appearance. I have to explain to the people at home. We have a statue of Gandhi outside and often it's snowing on him. Smudge. Somewhere in this brain, not my department, that sudden surge of dopamine makes a dope out of you and me. Amid Beaux-Arts limestone, moving through Union Station, laughing at fossils, suffering that odd affliction, aka happiness, fingering trigger to glutamate backlash, itchy to break from collective discantus, cry the shock of wet socks and feel the staticky feedback. Imagine a commodity fetish wrapped in a bay blanket coat. Why mind falters when aiming to outdraw these elemental conditions. Why mouth redresses proud tradition of striped bikini upon ethically sourced coyote fur scatter rug, reversible for any spillage or historically mess for descendants to tidy up. Scatological catfish tossed back into the Seine, our small tributary, our voyageur solitaire, forever othered among sleepwalkers for whom Nutty Club man cares. The more Costco China imports shunt into territory looking inward to Lake Fish Farm dream, petting sturgeon with lapels shaken in rage. You knew the bones were there when you built the museum. With Verismo pantomime scratched into repo land, queries with decorum whether the edifice is haunted by brute injustice or artifacts of our existence haunted by that friendly penetration of sky. Unapologetic holidays or eidetic self wraps self-same self in eiderdown and glosses indigenous loss, smudged right out of Heideggery death sign. Scofflaw surfaces at the ethno-history due, with tobacco in his pouch, female sage in his hair with that erratic quality unique to stolen pictures. That bilingual deus ex machina preps us for spiral ascent, before we plunge through atrocity exhibit, find ourselves out in the cold again. Snow falling on shoulders of a charitably scarfed Gandhi, his sculpted state of appall, unless that is a sub-zero shrug, celebrated for perpetuity. I hope some people maybe at home got what the shrug was all. So I'm going to read, those were a little bit long. This one's a slightly longer one. I'm going to close with this, which is on the back of the book. It says, character assassination, but today we might be saying cancellation. So from when I started this. We might talk about this later about Edward Dorn, whose work, The Gunslinger, was a great inspiration for this book, among other things. And so in his book, he has what he calls a metaphysical draw, which is, so instead of a Western where they shoot, they have like sort of, we'll say, academic theoretical terms. So in mine, there's a kind of attempt at a character assassination, which involves a culling of words from the language, and so Scofflaw battles this with his word hoard. And so this kind of is told in the last poem called "The Other Side I Seen," and there's a quote from anyway, we'll come back to it later. The other side I seen. One day we get wind of the factoid, the air's changed. Say fake news one more time, I can't even. We feel it in Scofflaw's gangly stride, comment on his being more laconic than the first Laconian, only before you say Lacanian, put it out of your noggin, because our cuz was quick in the draw in a random way, especially when on a randonnée, or swelling in the belly of the nearest coach house, poaching the finest axes to grind in these parts, pried loose from the leaky roof of the natter sphere. There's no way our man's running back to scratch back, that's for darn sure, so the talk goes. Same way we get wind about air, we hear Scofflaws decamped like a thief in the dark, with business English in tow. Funny business, we call him. That's his enemy, business English, BS English. Now, for the record, we never did trust English, a shifty, fidgety type who boosted lame thoroughbreds before making the move to pinching lame papers on finer subtleties of the language. No ideas but his own. We'd seen him stagger around town with Staggerlee, this administrator of authenticity, unless we're putting fart before horse. Fixing to go, Scofflaw squeezes our cheeks, kisses our temples, and blubbers over our rubbernecking before he flags down the bus with a tongue flogging to keep the Joudrey pace, so he can spew his latest views on der unterbrochen Gedanken. And we're like, Scofflaw, this ain't no time for pesky penderecki. There's one for the music department. His testy riposte. It's always time for pesky penderecki. That quartet for clarinet and strings never yet failed to put me in ambiguous mood. We run alongside until the stitches in our side get the better of us. Say the name, Scofflaw roars over the exhaust with a caveat. If you have a name, you can be sold. You can be told by that name, leave or come, you become in short a reference, or if bad luck is large in your future, you might become an institution. So an Edward Dorn quote. We'd prefer to defer to one of the Mouse-Strauss bunch, them reputable studiers of the half-savage mind, for behind their citations twitches this twisted homunculus hanger-on. For origin story, try a chilling threnodity in the rare unexpurgated edition, outback of Has-Been, Saskatchewan, where the muster's been having it off for the canola for as long as the eye can roll. Business English owns this notion straight out of the gate like a boss, mindful of mobbing should the air whip that way, bordering on social perturbation. Thing is, Scofflaw with his divining water, trademark, and thinky inklings ought to have gotten one of his hunches. There was nothing kosher about this little imp from the time he was no bigger than an avant-garde squiggle, wiggling among the weeds, snuggling up to misadventures and sundry. Scofflaw purportedly had. Business English with a voice that drips syrupy turpitude pleads his attributes. Speaking cacographically, I've been to Scrawl College, test my mettle, go on and vigilate the proceedings, Scofflaw. You'll find me an open book that goes by Benedict S. English. To quench your curiosity, the big S stands for succotash. Scofflaw, I don't expect you've taken one gander at my blog, but I can give you the skinny. Just look how we've been in lockstep since the hour of our respective birthings, under the same lorn star, each emerging with an imprint with the same outfit in the same year, then being up for the same laurels, though your star has a mite more polish to its spectral wavelength than the shine of mine, or so I reckon. Their shadows growing longer, When are they going to kick aside that tin of overheated beans and double up in the same mountain hardware hotbed to conserve sandflower? Keep in mind, whenever two Valpokes hit the happy trails, their business is their business, but in such a tinderbox climate, you're obliged to provide a disclaimer for every feral rod. Business English is a day shy of ageless, and in a year or two, hopes are high he'll blossom into an adult in touch with his own high-mindedness. A crack parser at 10 paces with adroitness, with any heap of metadata, able to divide academician from macadamia milk within minutes. Though it may be sour crepes, we never had no higher learning ourselves. The squeeze wearing off funny business gets down to brass tacks. Tomorrow in the tussle, think on me, Scofflaw, you who sent me a sans serif form letter declaring love is form, you who clamped in mine forged fetters, you who drowse when browsing my gallery of frowning faces. This apocryphal yarn chosen full of beans to cull wheelbarrows of utterances, from the lexicon upon pain of dearth, taking aim at the gunrunner's decal for ethical discourse in a comfy chair. Commentators within earshot designate the next second as the sketchiest blur in the history of literature, aside from this rapid fire aside. You're a one-eyed jack in these parts, but I've seen the other side of your face. Some swear he cultivates his private stash in an ankle holster to bolster his word hoard, if not a lavish pen below the gaze of his navel, the sort that knew the shape of how nations slip and slide, or how news blows into town third hand, or even in tenfold gusts of that Joko-serious lexicon, standoff. Business English blasts so fast, before the conceptual blanks get there, he's already washing his hands of another fait de complicité with a generous spume of certainty foam. Then a half dozen squeezes of sanitizer on the other side of the bougie boutique double doors. Hours or years later, the aftermath of his proprioceptive sidestep is this cannon backfiring in the stumped face of BS English with brain twiddlers, stubble jumpers, and a bright burst of verbiage outside his specialty. Call it appropriation in reverse, whittled down into verse. Faster than your average disaster, Business English is losing syllabi, then loosening up in the molecular sense. A few pieces of silver survive the process, just to give the myth a certain something. Never let them see your frets, and never show your hand, Scofflaw yawns, no matter how sanitized you count on being. What you can't see can hurt you. For the unstudied, frazzled by nifty sleight of hand, lateralized braining mainly rebounds any fricassee come your way, swaps every plain word for grade A utterance, dashing nomenclatures with minimal clatter to the ground, appears to layfolk like a whopping manifesto made manifest, and echoes like fast-acting tactical karma in a jam jar, no known side effects aside from complete defeat. Soft now. See the gaggle of pendraggers waddle this way and that, leaving the spines of various succulents upon compost heap in memory of funny business, the most anarchic customer to ever hitch up tenured breeches. The only way to keep it real, rustle up a colonial cochineal, must the lips of a lady the said product, to keep the legend of Scofflaw alive on many a used serviette before he trips off the grid, leaving us high and dry in another hiatus. In other words, there's something in our eye whenever the wind's still, too still, without the susurrus of his epic gassing, storming the fortified burrow of our hard-won affection. Follow the wanted circulars of countercultural workers to fingernail his whereabouts through conundrums and doldrums alike. Best bet he's linked up with semi-known scofflaws at the border of unterriffed speech, if not at the fringe of formalized speakeasy, scuttling through underground say-load with cartloads of rejections, the only growth industry in many their parts. Though even I's gone strangely quiet. Talk all you want to time mechanic or social prescriber or a flutter of social butterflies about the man with the plans, and you won't get nada, save his swirling away rain checks towards an operatic taco franchise. This, like most everything, is mere hearsay. Thanks.
Thank you so very much, Gary. While everybody gets settled at the chairs to my left, I'm just going to very quickly read the biography of your host for this evening. The one thing I will point out, just before the conversation does get underway, for those of you watching on YouTube, I noticed that a lot of you are participating in the live chat already. If you do have any questions that occur to you for Gary over the course of the evening, please don't hesitate to put those into the chat. We can certainly incorporate any questions you might have into the Q&A as well. But your host this evening, MC Joudrey, is a Canadian writer, artist, and designer. His second novel, Of Violence and Cliché, was released September 2013, followed by his collection of short stories, Charleswood Road, in August of 2014, which was nominated for the 2015 John Hirsch Award. His novel, Anonymous, was released in 2019 and won the Independent Publisher Gold Medal for Best Book of Fiction for Western Canada. It was also nominated for 2 Manitoba Book Awards, including the Margaret Lawrence Award for Best Book of Fiction. In addition to his writing, he is also publisher at Anvil Press, an award-winning Manitoba publishing house. Please join me in welcoming MC Joudrey. Thank you, John.
Hi.
Hi back.
Hi, Matt. How's it going, Matt? How are you feeling? Good vibe?
It's a great vibe, actually. After that reading, it really perks you up. Feels like I need a loaded weapon.
Matt and Gary in the morning. Sorry.
Well, glad we got that out of the way. Where do we start? Where do you want to start?
I think John wanted me to talk about Edward Dorn, who wrote a book called Gunslinger.
That's good, because that was actually the first line on my list.
Of course we did.
Dorn, the gunslinger.
So yeah, I found in Winnipeg, I found the book, The Gunslinger, which is about 4 books of poetry within one. And I found it in St. Boniface for $8, which is a great deal. And I just started working from it and thinking about, he was dealing, he's an American poet, was in England for a bit, but he created kind of, he's using the Western motif in the United States mythology to recreate, almost with an academic way, so it's a really fun way. So there's a lot of these highfalutin words and terms, and he's kind of mocking, hoping to create his own world. And so I want to do something like that. It was in Canada and was also a little bit related to Indigenous and other peoples. And so it's kind of this idea of a mythic figure that's always there. Yet the gunslinger. So in Canada, we wouldn't probably have a gunslinger. So maybe we'll have a Scofflaw. Somebody that talks loud sometimes. Too loud. Yells sometimes. Gets in trouble.
So where did the title originate from then? Like, how did you come up with Scofflaw?
That's my editor on the other book, Prairie Harbor, Michael Barnhold, who knows a lot about the prairie. He suggested Scofflaw, so it was used in that book, and I was like, oh, that's such a cool name. Yeah, man. And so and I put it in. So I wanted to use that later. So, oh, that's what I should call it.
So it was the working title, and then it was the final title.
And so he was Michael Barnhold was especially interested in the early the text, which is a longer manuscript, is more Dorn, more like Edward Dorn's work in style, and it that was called Lexicon Standoff.
Right.
So he's happy it's in the archive because there's 2 versions, and people argue over which one you like.
Right, and his work spanned from what the late 60s to the 70s. Yeah. And so, did you find when you were sort of coming up with the concept around Scofflaw that there would be, obviously there is this character Scofflaw in the text, and Scofflaw tends to make these appearances throughout the narrative at pivotal moments. Was that on purpose, or was that just haphazard?
I think it's just haphazard. He just kind of pops into being. Well, the longer version was, it sort of it felt like a T.S. Eliot method in a platinum chemical base or something, where it was being shrunk down. So it's an odd process. So that's why I said there's a kind of debate or like text.
Mhm.
So,
And how about other Western influences? Was there influences coming from any sort of spaghetti westerns? Was there influence coming from film? I mean, there's almost a lyrical feel to what's happening in the text. What about Western music?
I'm probably not into music so much, but I think like I meant to say, I'd forgotten the title, but it was that Marlon Brando film, When I'm Jack, where that quote's from the last part, and that was obviously a little bit of a thing. This is sort of one of those, there's a number of subversive westerns that begin to play with the form, and so that was influencing. Monty Hellman has a couple of cool westerns, pretty bleak. They're kind of going against the grain of usual.
Right.
So those would be influences. Yeah.
How about I mean, it's quite obvious. There's a ton of alliteration throughout the book, and did that just come to you naturally, or was that something that was a form that you were specifically trying to play with?
I think that's a stylistic concern of mine from early on. I was like giving myself the strap, like, stop, alliterating, stop. You know, so it was a self-flagellant, and then eventually it began to taper off into a workable form. So,
The sediment of history.
I'm getting there somewhat.
And I guess we'd be remiss not to talk a little bit about the cover art.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I mean, certainly worth holding up to the camera here, in case you haven't seen it.
So I should add that the backdrop,
Yeah,
the backdrop is by Casey Adams. And so she also did a backdrop for Katharina Vermette's book, The Stranger. And so Katharina says our books are related or cousins or something, which is nice. Because it came out about the same time. And but that's Casey Adams, local artist. Wonderful. She combines like technology and
that's what that was going to be my next question, is that if you look really closely past the birch bark, it looks like the guts of a computer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that felt really like the one we wanted to. I think Katharina went with a more like the image of person suits or mine. It was more about technology and what about globalization in this work that and then maybe emerged from the second version. Some concerns in mind.
So you did get to select, or at least be a part of the selection process for the cover art.
Oh yeah. I suggested it. Casey was very gracious to let me use some artwork for the book.
Talk to us about character assassination / cancellation. Gonna need a drink of water to answer that one.
I'll have you talk to my lawyer first. Well, it's like who doesn't experience this in some form, whether it's online and so I think that's a big part of today. Like I know there's one of the concerns that I was talking about was to do with the culling of language. And you said words are bad, more and more. And then the other thing is about the that sort of hostility that's out there. And I know people are getting fired for a like on Facebook and for all kinds of strange, like they said something or I don't know, you go back 10 years and somebody said something 10 years ago. There's a lot of strange stuff going on. And so I think those kind of concerns inform my work a lot. My latest books and books on the way. And also the myth, this book has the myth about how hard it is to find out what the truth of anything is. And I have had that for sure, where there's all kinds of myths I found because I moved around to different cities a little bit, and I find there's all these weird myths that I don't even know about, and I don't even know really what they're about, but they seem to be very present. And so I instead of trying to fight it in some really dumb way, I've just decided to go with it and expand upon it and build even larger and bigger edifices of the mythology, because it sort of feeds my creative.
So is there a bit of a high noon showdown here, metaphoric high noon showdown where you're drawing sort of old weapons from new holsters, trying to protect yourself from that sort of thing?
Yeah, I think so. Was the idea that you would be able to somehow ward off that maybe it's not possible in life, but one would hope that there's enough. Maybe it's the belief in words or art. Like if you believe in art or writing, like I think that some people are very active in this kind of, they might call it activism, but it could be a form of cancellation. I don't understand how you're sort of a writer doing this or an artist. I don't quite get that. Are you really? And so that's one of my thoughts on that. So the people that maybe believe in that art, maybe that magic is enough to ward off. What do they call apotroph? You ward off.
Yeah.
The charm to ward off the bad.
Well, so do you feel that as a writer you're often facing a loaded weapon?
I don't know about as a writer. I think in my writing space, I feel quite happy. I understand what's going on there to some degree. It's where I don't know why when you begin to take it out in the world, even a small scale, that would be so destructive. I'm kind of surprised at the effect it can have on individuals.
So are you a literary outlaw?
I do know some, and that I call them the Scofflaws, and they're in the different. And they were very supportive of the Urtext. I won't name them, but they've been blacklisted and there's all kinds of forms of cancellation for like for nothing. For any odd thing or something. And there's two administrators and art, things like that, and they're just like, this and that. Repeat these epithets. So that's going on, and so I kind of have a little. I felt they were a little bit
And did you draw upon them for this?
a little bit. I think they're sort of using it. Riding along and the posse, imaginary posse,
Imaginary posse
along
the high plains.
Yeah, don't get me started.
Don't get me. Well, you know what? We'll kick over another can of beans here. And we'll head back to Dorn because I'd like to sort of chat a bit about the playful portions of text. I'd like to talk about some of the jargon and some of the gibberish that obviously is found in the gunslinger and is a really important part of it, and how you drew upon that in Scofflaw.
Well, I think it's mostly stylistic, like it was, and especially the playful. I think that really is Edward Bourne. And I think especially in the academic world, which I'm not a part of, and then the fringes of it maybe. But you need to have a laugh sometimes. Maybe to a larger extent in the country, serious in the country, and trying to keep warm or cold all the time. And we could use a laugh now and then. So I think it's nice to take that playful style and I'll talk about the structure for a moment.
Yeah, please.
It's sort of like a dialectic, where there's a kind of we that's talking, and we represent some kind of collective. There's the people that are kind of already here, and then Scofflaw seems a bit of a neutral location. They kind of understand him some of the time.
Right.
And so I don't know, it's kind of a dialogue that's going on in my head. So it's not platonic dialogue, weird than that, but it's a kind of back and forth going on throughout the text. And there's a little bit of that comes from events.
So let's talk about Scofflaw as a character. I think I'd be remiss not to ask if somehow Scofflaw was in some way related to you.
Oh yeah, well I'll put this back to you because you arrived here. Why have you come here?
Yeah,
it's in your novel.
There it is.
So that's really good. But so that's that. It's sort of the feeling. And for me, I arrived in Saskatchewan first, and so there was a big adjustment to. I was surprised how much culture shock there was moving to even from Regina to Winnipeg, and so I've learned, and I've written all this stuff down. So amazing, but that's why I'm a big star. But but it's interesting. There was and there is the personal trying to adjust and understand this place as an alien. I'm still adjusting. I and it's hard to explain what it's like I said, sometimes you're like, oh, I'm being too loud, I should be treading a different way, or this is not happening well. But when I go to Toronto, it's the opposite. I'm, oh my God, it was just so.
But could that just be because it's so much bigger and you're so much more, there's so much more anonymity, you're so much more anonymous there?
So Vancouver is kind of in between, you know, that's where I'm from. So that was a certain thing. So figuring out the different styles, like when people are very friendly, and there's other stuff. I never, you know, I don't listen, but this is like I actually don't understand that. Some people are very like, okay, I'll say one thing is I was talking to one guy as an editor who just disappeared and ran off into the woods, and I was like, dude, like I just want to publish every work, and it worked. And like this is the kind of thing, and I'm like, to me this is very strange, but it's sort of like I've met a lot of people that are a little bit skittish. It's like, phew, like in the cartoons, like phew. And so I'm like, okay, that's a little. I'm not quite understood people kind of camping out outside my door to
Right.
publish this, but you know, they're sending me cakes and stuff. And so this is proposals even, but like this is not. It's sort of the opposite. It's different. It's different. I'm not saying it's good or bad. Like,
Well, I will provide you with some confirmation that
Okay.
that is some skittish behavior.
you're from Ontario, right?
Yeah, we actually started the press in Toronto and then moved it here.
Yeah, so you know a little bit. Well, Di Brown's talked about this when she's going back and forth between that and Ontario and then to Brandon, which is very small.
Right.
With having this, if you go and things are like moving in slow motion, and you go back and that's too fast. So it's interesting. And so when I zip over to Toronto, it's like everybody just takes you out and does all the stuff for you, and it's really strange. And I come back and it's different here. I haven't seen some people for years that I know here. And that's I'm shocked at that. Actually. I don't know. The people I know, writers I know, and I don't know how you. Other than these great events, that's the way I've been seeing people.
Right.
It seems hard sometimes to keep the connections going. No, I'm to blame for that too.
But
Two-way street.
yeah, it is a two-way street. But you know, in keeping with the theme of the Wild West, a gun to your head. If somebody was to ask you know, where are you from? What would your answer be?
Well, now I think of this place kind of as home. I don't feel I can get back to it. That's really interesting too, is I can't get back to this idea of home I used to have. I was in Vancouver, I don't know how many decades, it's a long time. And I can't get back to that idea. So my characters tend to have amnesia now. Amnesiacs that can't, in Patrick Modiano novels, I think they're amnesiacs. Like, oh, I hit my head and I can't. And so this is, so it's like that. I find that's interesting because then there's a kind of before time that almost doesn't exist. I'm planted here. I'm an invasive species here now. I see myself. Self-image.
You're that skipper you were talking about earlier.
Maybe that's who I am.
Which is probably a good segue into.
Which butterfly are you?
Well, you know, I'd like to think
this guy knows his butterfly.
I'd like to think I'm one of the colorful ones, but you know, sometimes, yeah, well, hard to say. But I would like to talk about butterflies with you. I mean, obviously they float throughout the entire text. Why butterflies?
Well, this actually started in Saskatchewan, where I spent a lot of time. I had a professor friend who was teaching me about grasshoppers, and I kind of wrote a lot of stuff about seeing there, but they're really difficult to identify in comparison. And when I got here, I was still trying to look at grasshoppers, and there were less of them. And then the butterflies would show up and start doing all cool feathers and they're doing all this stuff on the flower. And I was like, okay, I'm trying to look at this stuff. And so I started to get really interested in them because they're just easier to identify and kind of learn about.
They're terrible to photograph.
Yeah, okay. I do have some. I've some.
We've shared, yeah.
Yeah, so I kind of got into that, so I became more interested in that. So there were actually maybe too many butterflies in the first manuscript. So
you trimmed it back.
I actually took some of them and moved them to they're in a section called Hate Waste. And I want to use the butterfly somewhere else in a different way. So I reworked all that. But yeah, I got to really like them.
There's there's an exceptionally powerful visual at one point at the beginning, and it's a bit of text where a black swallowtail floats through right in front of Scofflaw. And is that something that you actually witnessed yourself?
Well, I live in an apartment building in River Heights, and they tend to come around there quite a bit.
Mhm.
And I learned that there's the Navajo like them have some significance, and they were very important in the culture. And so it's kind of I projecting some significance onto them, maybe, and it's important. Maybe there's something means something, but I tend to get them coming around on the lawn.
Right.
There. And then the disturbed areas where the guy was bragging about
That's-
so here's a specimen I can write about for my anthropological study. And so, yes, that's come from those little incidents.
just the moments that happen, and they're little, just like butterflies. So, and it was a tough year for the butterflies as well. The drought really,
Yeah, 4 years of drought. Come on.
yeah,
In addition to the
good for the grasshoppers though, Gary.
yeah. Lately I've been like there's 4 years of drought in my life. When am I going to get over that?
Oh, you published a
I'm
book.
starting to feel like I'm on The View. Only I'd be yelling.
well, we can do some yelling if you want to. We can.
Loud.
Okay, well, let's talk about idiom. There's quite a bit of it in the book, but it's interesting because you bend the idioms. You don't end them the way that you would expect the idiom to end. And I found that very intriguing. When you're writing that way, is it on, like, obviously it's on purpose that you're selecting a different ending, but was that just to reinvent the idioms that you were using?
I don't think that's done with deliberation as so much as that my ear follows the sound often, and then there's a kind of revelation, or often called surprise, because my ears follow something, and I assume my brain's working, but it gets to the point where something, and I'm like, oh, whoa. And of course, as a poet, any poet, you're trying to avoid having this cliche language.
Right.
Otherwise, I'd be
Just staying away
politics.
from it. Just staying away from the platitudes altogether.
Yeah. Otherwise, it'd be shouting out politics. Try not to.
Yeah. I had another really interesting thing here that I wanted to ask you. Have you ever scofflawed or scoffed at the law, or better yet, scoffed with the law in some way, where you were in a moment that you witnessed something that shouldn't be done and went along with it?
Well, I probably can't remember an incident. I'm not sure that's probably happened. I'm no hero, but yeah, I think in life that happens a lot, where sometimes something's happened and you don't, in the moment you don't act. I think it's something that's going on all around us, but I can't think of an incident exactly that troublesome young person.
No, you stayed on the right side of the fence, type thing.
Yeah, most of it, nothing to do.
So then, what's the genesis for a book like this? How does it start? How does it germinate?
Well, the way I think of it, I don't think of it so much. I think of it more as like right now we're in a time of restrictions that are quite severe, and sometimes they're needed, but other times and so there's a way of.
So do you think people are scoffing laws more?
Well, yeah,
often now
that's
than-
happening now. But there's a question there about people or not. I'm not going to give advice to people. I'll be shouted down.
John, how are we for time? Okay. Well, I've got a few more then, if that's so. Do you?
Is the polygraph still on?
Yeah, the polygraph's still there. With Scofflaw as a character, do you see Scofflaw? And I don't want to attribute any sort of gender to the character, but do you see Scofflaw as a hero, an anti-hero? Or is Scofflaw just a watcher, just witness?
Yeah, I don't think the terms really work for that. Like, I don't think of hero or anti-hero. I just think of, I like things like irritant. I would take. I think I told. I think there's some point we were talking, and I was talking about how it was irritant. I thought that was a good place to be in terms of my literature. An irritant. So I can
Just stirring the pot.
And so I think Scofflaw maybe takes that.
Yeah.
There's a certain static and yeah. So, because otherwise you're some things can become a bit propagandistic, I find, in maybe politics, and it's so closely tied with poetry, for example. And so I think things should be kind of inverted, kind of contrarian, and weird, as John says.
Or ambiguity, which
Yeah.
is, obviously a big thing for you as well.
Because that breaks, it's kind of like we were talking about with breaking the idiom. If something happens in the mind. I know Jonathan Ball, he reviewed all my books, and he talked about defamiliarization. He knew the whole academic source, but that's a good term.
Right.
When that happens, something good happens in your brain. From the cave paintings to art, you see those like surrealist art, something happens. So I think it's the same with language. Sometimes when you encounter something, your brain has to do that.
The synapses start firing.
Yeah, and you maybe feel better. You have to be honest.
Go down those Wikipedia rabbit holes and come out the other side.
Whatever your
A
poison.
lesser man. So what is your poison?
I'm a language junkie. I'm looking at a lot of YouTube, a lot of shows, old shows. So I'm reliving my childhood. As you get older and older, I find you identify more with orca in this music. When you're a kid, you're like, geez, my life is like orcas.
Just more of a disruptor. Yeah. And in the end, everything
things don't
works
always
out
work.
fine.
Things don't always work. Yeah, like there's some good lessons in that stuff. I don't think there's a lot of same lessons. I used to tell you a lesson.
They were
programmed.
mandated to do it.
Yeah.
So is there a good lesson in Scofflaw?
Oh no, I don't do lessons.
You don't have a one to grow on in there?
No. No, I don't.
So we should probably open up the floor here and get reinvigorated and kick over more cans of beans here with some new questions from the
I
audience.
just want to say thanks for coming out. I know that we're under these difficult conditions, and so I really appreciate that. There's more people than I imagined being here. So I appreciate more braving.
Oh, and I'd like to say thank you so much for having me out. So John, should we ask a few questions and see what the audience has to say?
No, certainly. So the one thing I will say before we get started is we just have a few minutes for questions because we have our little bit late. But there was one question that came up online, which was about how to purchase signed copies. And I will reassure you that we will be getting Garry to sign some additional copies of the book. So if you would like a signed copy, please do get in contact with the store and we'll make sure that one finds its way to you. For anybody here, if you do have a question, all we'll ask is that you please repeat it out loud or say it out loud for the first time, and then I'll repeat it into the microphone to make sure everybody can hear. But we did have one question online from Philip Landrum, who was wondering if there is an internal geography independent of the place.
Leave it to Tad to go a question we don't understand.
That's all yours, Garry.
What was it? Geography? Something to this point?
Internal geography independent of the place.
Oh.
It's specifically in reference to a comment you apparently made at 7:46 p.m.
Okay. I think so. I think that if you go, I'll go back in time, but to like William Carlos Williams was working with Paterson, New Jersey, and he was kind of creating this place where there's a person, a guy, and then there's a river, and the whole thing is sort of like in the city, and they're all kind of this working whole. So I think that's that kind of thinking probably this work. And that would mean there is a geography that's overlaid upon, and to a larger extent, I think my work has a lot of that where I'm often imposing something on the space, like from maybe Europe or like other styles of writing that my thought was using, superimposing that. So yeah, I think, yeah, the short answer is yes, there is geography.
Is there anybody here who has any questions?
Well, I have one more little item that I'd like to quickly read on the back of the book there, which I think is such a lovely notation. And I found it humorous too, which hopefully will spur people to buy the book, which they should buy the book. This is the whole point of putting this stuff out. As a publisher, I can honestly say, buy the book. So this is from Michael Barnholm's blurb, which when I read this, it just struck me. There's a part in it where he says, in the future, if there is a future, students will annotate Morse's work until they get it right or get their PhDs by default. So funny, you'll laugh till it hurts.
Perfect. No, thank you very much for that. And if you folks have any closing comments or any final words you might like to offer, please do feel free to do so, and then we'll call up Charlene from the Writers Festival to close things.
Barry, any final thoughts?
No, so thank you for listening to it. Thank you for coming here, and also thank you to the people at home for tuning in and listening.
Thanks very much, everybody. Really appreciate it. And a big round of applause for Garry.
Okay, so I just basically hang around and wait for Garry to put out another book because I just can't, I don't think I've ever heard a more exciting reader who actually knows how to read his own writing. So thank you so much, Garry. It was a really, really compelling reading, and you know, my head just flies around because I don't know where you're going to go. I feel like I'm kind of white knuckling, and it's so exciting, and it's so vivid and alive. So thank you. It was a really stunning.
You're in it for the thrill.
Yeah, I'm here for the thrill. So another big thanks to both Garry and Matt. And I get to also acknowledge how pleased we are to be here at McNally Robinson. It is amazing to be here in actual, in body, not just in our wishing. Really so pleased that the store has made this safe place for us to gather and taken care of us so that we can gather to have these encounters, and also done all the work to make it possible for people to still stay with us elsewhere. So I think this is the new world we're in. We're kind of a bit more, becoming more hybrid, and there's a lot of adjusting to do. And I really appreciate John for just not even flagging in getting everything set up, but also to this amazing store, which continues to be a real cultural hub in the city. So big thanks to McNally.
Mm-hmm.
So we are halfway through Thin Air 2021. We have a lot of content online this year because we are running our festival as a hybrid festival. So we are featuring 61 writers, I believe it is, and they have all contributed recordings. So we have a festival website, thinairfestival.ca, which is just cram-packed with really fantastic short videos that include readings and conversations, and there's even a weightlifting demonstration, which belongs to its book. So it's a huge, exciting thing to watch the kind of creative content that writers will produce to sort of help us to engage their work now that we're all living in this weird time. So please do spend some time with us there online. We're up until October 18, so a little bit longer still. I'll remind you that you have to keep your mask on when you leave the space and to socially distance, blah, blah, blah. But I do also want to invite you back to this space again. Our next in-person hybrid event is this Friday. Colin Smith is going to be reading Permanent Carnival Time, his new collection with host Ken Scott. And then next Tuesday, right after Thanksgiving, when we're all kind of waking from our turkey coma, Rowan McCandless is here with her new book called Persephone's Children, and her host is written in French. Those both start at 7, same rules as today. And if you can't be here, you can always watch them online. And if you can't be watching them online at the time, you can always tune in later, because even this evening will be played again. So if you want to try to catch a few more of those elaborate puns that were flying through the air at a breakneck pace, you can re-listen to this conversation. So thank you all for coming. Thank you to our fantastic poet and host. And thanks to all of you for being part of a real live event.